You know that little voice in your head, the one that whispers, "This is a terrible idea," right before you do something stupid? These are 10 true stories about people who told that voice to get lost. This isn't just a list. It's a deep dive into the moments where human confidence went to war with cold, hard physics. And physics, as you're about to see, remains undefeated. Consider this your official warning. The following actions were a one-way ticket out of the gene pool. Don't join them. Number 1. The unbreakable lawyer. Alright, let's talk about party tricks. Most of us are happy if we can make a beer bottle disappear in under 5 minutes. But Gary Hoy, a high-flying lawyer in Toronto, had a trick that was less magic and more testing God's patience. His stage was his corner office on the 24th floor of a skyscraper, and his co-star was a massive pane of glass that stood between him and a very long drop. His signature move, the one that made paralegals gasp and interns question their career choices, was to prove that this window was unbreakable. And how did he prove it? By taking a full-speed, linebacker-style running charge and slamming his body into it. Imagine a pinstriped human cannonball. He'd done it before, always bouncing off like a rubber ball, leaving him basking in the glory of his own perceived immortality and the marvels of modern engineering. It was the ultimate power move. One day in 1993, with a captive audience of bright-eyed law students, Gary decided it was showtime. He wanted to teach them a lesson not found in any law book. He took a running start, a blur of ambition and expensive tailoring, and boom, he hit the window and bounced right off. A solid performance. But for Gary, good enough was never enough. He was an overachiever. He yelled "Encore!" to an audience of one, himself. He backed up, took an even more determined run, channeling all his courtroom aggression into this one final spectacular launch. And here's the beautiful, tragic irony of it all. He was right. The glass did not break. What he failed to consider, in his long and successful legal career, was that the window wasn't just a piece of glass. It was a system. And his second mighty impact popped the entire window frame clean out of the building's wall, like a cork from a champagne bottle. Gary Hoy sailed through the open air, a silent, stunned projectile on a one-way trip to the pavement below. He had successfully proven his point to a group of horrified students, winning his final case against the window. But in the Supreme Court of Physics, his appeal was brutally and immediately denied. Number 2. The Porsche and the final payment. We all form emotional attachments to our stuff. That new iPhone you treat like a newborn baby. That vintage guitar you'd rescue before your least favorite cousin. But there's a line, right? A point where you say, okay, it's just an object. This is a story about a man who couldn't see that line, probably because it was blocked by the massive hood ornament of his beloved Porsche. Our hero is a 68-year-old Italian gentleman enjoying a leisurely drive in his prized SUV. He pulls up to a railroad crossing, perhaps daydreaming about espresso or yelling at other drivers, and makes a tiny but significant mistake. He stops directly on the tracks. It's the kind of oops moment that usually ends with a frantic reverse. But for him, it ended with the deafening clang of crossing gates descending, trapping his German-engineered masterpiece in a steel cage. The lights flashed, the bells rang. It was the universal signal for, you have made a terrible life choice. In a moment of pure, unadulterated genius, he bailed. He scrambled out of the car, got to safety, and watched as a freight train, the size of a small town, bore down on his four-wheeled baby. He was safe. The story should end there. But then something snapped. Maybe it was the thought of the insurance paperwork. Maybe it was the vision of a mechanic rubbing his hands together, gleefully calculating the repair bill. Whatever it was, he decided that his life was a fair price to pay to avoid a major inconvenience. He did the unthinkable. He turned around and ran back towards the car, waving his arms like he was trying to flag down a taxi, not a 2,000-ton metal monster on a fixed path. It was a bold negotiation tactic, but the train wasn't interested in a counteroffer. The impact was exactly what you'd expect. A symphony of crushed metal and shattered dreams. The man was launched nearly 100 feet, his attempt to save his Porsche resulting in the one thing he couldn't afford, a bill that had to be paid with his life. He successfully avoided the massive repair cost, opting instead for a funeral bill, proving that sometimes the most expensive thing you can own is a really, really bad idea. Number 3. The jet-powered car. In the great American tradition of bigger is better, there's always someone who takes it a step too far. Someone who looks at a perfectly good muscle car and thinks, you know what this needs? A military-grade rocket engine. This isn't just a story, it's a legend. A modern folktale about a man who decided that the laws of physics were more like friendly suggestions. Our hero was a former Air Force sergeant who got his hands on a JATO unit, a jet-assisted takeoff rocket designed to help massive cargo planes get off short runways. To you and me, that's a piece of serious military hardware. To him, it was the ultimate aftermarket car part. He found a long, straight stretch of desert road in Arizona, mounted the rocket to the roof of his 1967 Chevy Impala, and prepared to make history. His goal was simple: to go very, very fast. He accelerated to a high speed under the car's own power, took a deep breath, and hit the ignition button for the rocket. The result was less Fast and Furious and more Looney Tunes. The JATO rocket fired with the force of a vengeful god, pinning him to his seat and turning his classic Impala into a horizontal missile. The car accelerated so violently that it melted the tires and vaporized the asphalt beneath them, leaving 2 black stripes seared into the road. He was traveling at an estimated 350 miles per hour when he realized he had made a catastrophic miscalculation. He had no way to steer, and the brakes had long since melted into useless slag. The car remained on the road for a few miles, a screaming metal blur, before it encountered a slight curve. But at that speed, a slight curve is basically a launch ramp. The car became airborne, soared for over a mile, and slammed into the face of a cliff, 125 feet up from the desert floor. The impact left behind little more than a blackened crater and a legend that has been told and retold for decades. Investigators were utterly baffled by the scene, finding only a scorched hole in a rock wall and a story that seemed too insane to be true. He wanted to be the fastest man on Earth, and for a few brief, terrifying moments, he absolutely was. He just forgot to plan for the landing. Number 4. The cactus and the shotgun. Some problems require a delicate touch, a nuanced approach, a careful consideration of all possible outcomes. And some problems, apparently, just require a shotgun. This is a story about a man who was faced with a minor nuisance and decided to solve it with the kind of overkill that would make a cartoon character blush. Our protagonist, David, lived in the Arizona desert and had a peculiar enemy growing in his yard: a massive 26-foot-tall saguaro cactus. This wasn't just any cactus, it was a local landmark, probably older than the state itself. But to David, it was just a big prickly pest. One day, he decided he'd had enough. He wanted it gone. But instead of calling a professional or, just leaving the ancient plant alone, he grabbed his shotgun. His plan was as simple as it was idiotic. He was going to shoot the cactus down. He stood at the base of the giant succulent and opened fire, blasting away at its trunk with round after round. At first, his plan seemed to be working. A huge chunk of the cactus, one of its massive arms, broke off and crashed to the ground. Vindicated, David went in for the kill. He fired another round into the main trunk, aiming to finish the job. And that's when the cactus decided to fight back. The second blast critically wounded the ancient plant, causing the entire 23-foot main trunk to lose its structural integrity. It began to topple over, slow at first, and then with gathering momentum. David, standing triumphantly at the scene of his victory, looked up just in time to see several tons of spiky green flesh descending directly upon him. He had spent so much time focused on destroying his enemy that he never considered it might fall on him. The giant cactus crushed him instantly, pinning him to the desert floor. In his one-man war against a harmless plant, he had managed to lose in the most ironic way possible. The police later remarked that it was the first, and likely the last, time they had ever listed cactus as the cause of death. David had successfully taken down his foe, but the cactus got the last laugh. Number 5. The deadly dance with the cobra. Alright, so picture this. You're at a party. The music's good, everyone's having a decent time, and then some guy decides it's time for the evening's entertainment. But he doesn't pull out a guitar or a deck of cards. Oh no, he pulls out a live, highly venomous cobra. This isn't a hypothetical, man, this actually happened. We're talking about a dude in Southeast Asia who thought the best way to liven up a party was to introduce everyone to his pet danger noodle. He wasn't just showing it off either. He had a whole routine. He'd get the snake riled up, swaying back and forth, doing the whole snake charmer thing, you know? The crowd's loving it, half terrified, half amazed. But this guy, let's call him the Cobra King, decides to take it up a notch. He wasn't content just dancing with the snake. He wanted to kiss it. A big, dramatic man-on-serpent smooch right on its hooded head. He leans in, puckering up, probably thinking about the epic story this will make. The snake, however, was not in a romantic mood. It had been poked, prodded, and forced to listen to bad party music. It was not looking for a soulmate. As the Cobra King leaned in for his fatal kiss, the snake did what snakes do when a giant face is rushing towards them. It struck. It bit him right on the lip. Now, you'd think this would be the point where someone screams, "Call an ambulance." But our hero, high on adrenaline and low on common sense, just laughed it off. He told everyone, "Don't worry, I'm immune." He claimed he'd been building up an immunity to the venom for years. He even refused any medical help. He just went back to partying, probably feeling like an absolute legend, for about an hour. Then, the neurotoxin started to do its thing. He went from party legend to guy who can't feel his face pretty quick. By the time his friends realized his immunity was a total fantasy, it was far too late. He died right there, a victim of his own misplaced confidence and a very, very annoyed snake. The lesson here? If a cobra tells you it's not a kissing booth, you should probably listen. Number 6. The free smoke detector. So, you know how every apartment has those things you're not supposed to mess with? The smoke detectors, the sprinklers, the stuff that's there to, keep you from burning to a crisp? Well, this story is about 2 college students in Oklahoma who looked at a smoke detector and saw a home improvement opportunity. These guys were living in a dorm, and for some reason the smoke detector in their room was beeping. Not the full-on, the building's on fire, run for your life alarm, just that annoying, low-battery chirp that's designed to slowly drive you insane. Instead of calling maintenance like a normal human being, they decided to handle it themselves. Their brilliant idea? They ripped the detector off the ceiling. Problem solved, right? No more beeping. But then they looked at the wires hanging from the ceiling and had another, even more brilliant idea. One of them, a 20-year-old student, decided he could fix the wiring. He apparently thought he was a master electrician. So he grabs the 2 bare wires, one in each hand. Now, any kid who's ever stuck a fork in an outlet could tell you what happens next. The instant he completed the circuit with his own body, 20 volts of pure, unadulterated "you messed up" surged through him. He was thrown across the room, his brief and ill-advised career as an electrician coming to a very sudden end. But here's where it gets even dumber. His roommate, seeing his friend get zapped, didn't think, "Wow, those wires are dangerous." He thought, "My buddy needs help." So he rushes over and grabs his friend to pull him away. But his friend is still touching the wires. So, zap! Now they're both getting electrocuted, stuck together in a buzzing, convulsing mess of terrible decisions. A third roommate finally walked in, saw the human science experiment happening in his dorm room, and had the presence of mind to knock the first guy off the wires with a wooden chair. The first guy didn't make it. The second guy survived, but probably had a newfound respect for electricians. They just wanted to stop a beeping noise, but ended up learning the hardest possible lesson about electricity. It's always looking for a shortcut, and they made themselves the perfect one. Number 7. The bungee cord bet. Alright man, you ever made a stupid bet with your friends? Like, $5 you can't eat a whole ghost pepper or something like that. It's a rite of passage. But this is what happens when a stupid bet graduates from college and gets a PhD in catastrophic stupidity. We're in Reston, Virginia, with a 22-year-old guy named Eric. Eric and his buddies are hanging out and they come across a 70-foot-tall railroad trestle. A big, scary bridge over a rocky patch of ground. Most people would look at it and think, "Cool, let's not fall off that." But Eric and his friends looked at it and thought, "I bet we could bungee jump off this." Now, they didn't have any actual bungee cords, but they did have a big roll of, wait for it, bungee cords. but not the professional kind. We're talking about the stuff you buy at a hardware store to tie a mattress to the roof of your car. They took a bunch of these cords, tied them all together, and created what they thought was a perfectly functional homemade bungee rig. Then came the next critical question. How do you know how long the cord should be? Do you use math? Physics? Do you consult an expert? Nah, they just eyeballed it. They literally held it up, looked down 70 feet to the ground, and went, yeah, that looks about right. So they tie one end to the bridge and the other end around Eric's ankles. He's the brave soul who's going first. He stands on the edge, probably feeling like a legend in the making. His friends are cheering him on. He takes a deep breath and leaps into the void, a pioneer in the field of DIY extreme sports. And for a glorious second, it probably felt amazing. The wind in his hair, the adrenaline pumping. He's flying. Then the cord went taut, and Eric discovered the fatal flaw in their eyeball measurement system. The cord wasn't just too long, it was way too long. He didn't bounce gracefully a few feet from the ground. He just kept going. He hit the ground at full speed, an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. The coroner later determined that the cause of death was multiple injuries, sustained from, well, bungee jumping, with a cord that was longer than the fall. His friends learned a valuable and horrifying lesson that day. When it comes to measuring things that separate life from death, close enough is never close enough. Number 8. The hot air balloonist. Okay, so hot air ballooning seems like a pretty chill hobby, right? You just float around, look at stuff from above, maybe drink some champagne. It's supposed to be relaxing. But this story is about a guy who managed to turn the world's most peaceful form of aviation into a high-stakes, high-altitude disaster. We're in the UK, with a 57-year-old hot air balloon enthusiast. He's getting ready for a flight with a passenger. He goes through the whole pre-flight check. Basket, check. Burner, check. Giant nylon bag, check. Everything's looking good. He starts inflating the balloon, the giant fabric dome slowly rising from the ground. But he notices a problem. One of the ropes, a vent line used to release hot air for landing, is tangled near the top of the balloon. Now, a normal pilot would probably deflate the balloon, untangle the rope, and start over. But our guy was in a hurry. He had a passenger waiting. So he decides to take a little shortcut. He tells his passenger, "Hey, just hang on a sec," and starts climbing up the side of the partially inflated balloon to fix the rope. He's scaling this giant, slippery nylon dome, probably feeling pretty resourceful. But while he's up there, playing mountaineer on his own aircraft, he forgot one tiny crucial detail. The balloon was still attached to the burner, and the burner was still on. The balloon continued to fill with hot air. And what do hot air balloons do when they're full of hot air? They go up, with our hero still clinging to the side of it. The balloon lifted off the ground, with the passenger standing helplessly in the basket below, and our guy clinging on for dear life about 50 feet up on the outside. He was holding on to the very balloon he was supposed to be piloting from the inside. The passenger, now on an unscheduled, pilotless flight, had no idea how to operate the thing. The man clinging to the side realized his options were running out. He held on as long as he could, but his grip finally failed. He fell from the balloon, his attempt to save a few minutes of time costing him everything. The passenger, by some miracle, eventually drifted back down to Earth safely. But the pilot had learned the ultimate lesson in aviation. Always make sure you're on the inside of the aircraft before it takes off. Number 9. The DIY elevator. Alright, we all know that one guy who insists on fixing everything himself. The car, the plumbing, the toaster. He's got a shed full of tools and an unshakable belief that YouTube tutorials are a substitute for years of professional training. This is a story about a man like that. A Polish farmer who looked at his broken freight elevator and thought, how hard can it be? Now, this wasn't some fancy passenger elevator in an office building. This was a heavy-duty, chain-operated lift used for hauling beets and other farm stuff. And it was broken. So, our hero, a man named Christoph, decided to become a certified elevator technician for the day. He called his brother-in-law over because every legendary DIY project needs a slightly less enthusiastic sidekick. Their first brilliant idea was to tie a rope to the top of the elevator car and have the brother-in-law pull it up from the ground floor, while Christoph rode inside, presumably supervising the repairs. This plan failed immediately when they realized the brother-in-law wasn't strong enough to hoist a multi-ton metal box. So they moved on to Plan B. And Plan B is where this story goes from a bad idea to a masterpiece of flawed logic. Christoph decided they needed more power. So he untied the rope from the elevator, threaded it through a pulley on the ceiling, and tied the other end to the bumper of his tractor. You can see where this is going, right? The plan was for the brother-in-law to slowly drive the tractor away from the barn, gently pulling the elevator car up. But Christoph made one final, fatal adjustment. He decided the best place to watch this whole operation unfold was from inside the elevator car. So he's in the box, the rope is tied to the tractor, and he gives the signal. His brother-in-law hops in the tractor and hits the gas. But he didn't gently pull away, he floored it. The tractor shot forward, the rope snapped taut, and the elevator car didn't gently rise. It launched upwards like a rocket from a silo. It shot past the second floor at an incredible speed and slammed into the pulley system on the ceiling with such force that the rope snapped. And what happens when a heavy metal box that was just launched into the air is suddenly disconnected from the thing pulling it? Gravity takes over. The elevator car, with Christoph still inside, plunged all the way back down, crashing into the ground. But the story's not over. As the elevator car hit the bottom, Christoph's head popped out of the top hatch, probably to see what the hell just happened. At that exact moment, the heavy counterweight, which had been launched into the air when the elevator shot up, came plummeting back down, landing directly on his head. He had created a perfect, self-contained Rube Goldberg machine of death. Number 10. The dynamite vending machine. Okay, so we started this journey with a guy who fought a vending machine and lost. We're going to end it with a guy who decided to escalate that war to a whole new level. This isn't just a battle. This is vending machine warfare. We're in Washington State with a 33-year-old man who was thirsty. He walked up to a soda machine, put his money in, and got nothing. The machine just stared back at him, silent and smug. But this guy wasn't going to shake it. He wasn't going to punch it. He was a thinker, a strategist. He decided to use tactical explosives. He went home and constructed a homemade pipe bomb, packed with a quarter stick of dynamite. His plan was surgical. He would place the bomb in the coin return slot, blow the front of the machine open, and liberate the cans of soda that were rightfully his. It was the ultimate consumer rights protest. So he goes back to the machine, armed with his improvised explosive device. He carefully places the bomb in the slot, lights the fuse, and then, in a rare display of common sense, he runs for cover behind a nearby building. He waits, and then, boom! The explosion is way bigger than he expected. It doesn't just pop the door open, it obliterates the entire vending machine, sending shrapnel and twisted metal flying in every direction. From his hiding spot, he probably felt a surge of victory. The machine was defeated. He had won. He waited a moment for the smoke to clear, and then he emerged from cover to claim his spoils of war. But in his moment of triumph, he failed to notice one crucial piece of flying debris. The explosion had launched the machine's heavy, steel-plated front door high into the air. It went up, tracing a perfect parabolic arc through the sky before coming back down with pinpoint accuracy, landing directly on his head. He was taken out by the very door he had just blown up. He won the battle against the vending machine, but in the end, the machine got its revenge from beyond the grave. It's the perfect story to end on, proving that no matter how clever you think your plan is, physics and irony are always waiting to deliver the final punchline. It makes you wonder, what's more dangerous? A bad idea, or the total, unshakable confidence that it's a good one? Every person in this video had that confidence. Tell me in the comments, which story is the ultimate proof that confidence can be deadlier than any weapon? And remember, these aren't just stories. They're cautionary tales with real-world consequences. Don't become a cautionary tale. Hit like if you agree. And subscribe for more reminders from the School of Hard Knocks.